What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to College Football Talk with Peter Burtnett. In today's episode, I'm going to be going over my Week 2 predictions, and without further introduction, let's get right into it. Week 1 was an exciting showcase of what we have to look forward to this year in college football. Week 2 is primed to be a week that doesn't deliver quite in the same area of having the high-level marquee matchups, ranked versus ranked. So there's one top 10 matchup that's big. Other than that, there's a lot of games that are interesting and that I'm looking forward to. But before I get into my picks, if you're going to enjoy this video, please feel free to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you're always up to date whenever I upload. But let's dive right into it. Starting things out with Friday, going over a couple of underrated matchups. Not going to spend too much time on these. In the 7 p.m. Eastern window, we have BYU at SMU. Cougars quarterback Jake Retzlaff threw for 348 yards, 3 touchdowns in the Week 1 win. And the Mustangs offensive trio of quarterback Preston Stone, running back Brashard Smith, and wide receiver RJ Maryland are a fun group to watch, and I think they'll be able to put up a lot of points in this one. I think SMU gets the win, but I think BYU has enough offensive firepower to cover the spread. I think SMU gets a 34-27 win. Then at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central Time, Duke at Northwestern. Obviously, the Wildcats are playing at that pop-up stadium right on the lakefront of Lake Michigan. Both teams kind of struggled offensively. Duke figured things out, 26-3 win over Elon, but they only had 10 first-half points, and Northwestern got just a 13-6 win over Miami, Ohio. Duke quarterback Malik Murphy, a transfer from Texas, plugged in pretty well in Week 1, 291 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. I think he's the difference maker here, and I'm going to go with Duke 27, Northwestern 20. Then moving into the big games on Saturday, and I'm going to start things out with the one that is getting all the headlines, the best game out of this bunch. That's number 3 Texas at number 10 Michigan. The Wolverines led Fresno State just 16-10 with 6 minutes left in that one. They were able to get a late touchdown, and then Will Johnson with a long pick six to put the game away. But Donovan Edwards was kind of noticeably missing in that game. 11 carries, 27 yards. But he is known for being at his best in the big games like this. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what he does this week, but I certainly do not doubt the abilities of the Don at running back for the Wolverines. And Khalil Mullings kind of plugged in anyways with 92 rush yards. Davis Warren had just 118 passing yards. That's because he was kind of splitting time, I imagine, with Alex Orji at quarterback. He also had a touchdown and an interception. Colston Loveland had 8 receptions for 87 yards and a touchdown. The question here is, if Texas is able to shut him down, I think the Wolverines still don't really have a proven number 2 guy. They have a couple of guys who stepped up in moments last year, but in a big game like this, are they going to be able to produce at that level again? A guy like Tyler Morris or Samaj Morgan? That's a question for the Wolverines to answer. Longhorns, not too much to take away from this game. They cruised in their Week 1 matchup 52-0 against Colorado State. Quinn Ewers and the offense looked good. The defense obviously shut down the Rams. I think Texas has enough to get the job done. They won a Week 2 game on the road last year in a hostile environment at Alabama. I think they get it done again this year, and I think it's a Texas 30, Michigan 23 final. Couple of other noon games that I think are interesting. Arkansas at number 16, Oklahoma State, both 1-0. I think in this one, the Razorbacks are going to be overmatched by Allen Bowman and Ollie Gordon, that running back quarterback duo. Bowman threw for 267 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Gordon rushed for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. Arkansas, I think, does have the firepower against Arkansas Pine Bluff. They put up 70 points. I think they stick with the Cowboys in this one, but I'm going Oklahoma State 34, Arkansas 26 to cover the spread. Then number 23, Georgia Tech, 2-0. There's another 2-0 team here at Syracuse, who's 1-0. The Yellow Jackets find themselves ranked in the top 25 for the first time since 2015. On the flip side, the Orange looked pretty good with Kyle McCord at quarterback. He was able to find his guys, had to put together a pretty clean, good game for the Orange against Ohio in their win. And I think going into Carrier Dome will be a tough test for the Yellow Jackets. It's not a big-time environment by any means, but it is still traveling, a road game. They've dealt with that, though. But I do think ultimately the big game experience that Kyle McCord got from his time at Ohio State, he played well against Notre Dame. played well against Penn State, and kind of had obviously some issues against Michigan, wasn't able to get the job done, but overall did well in those big games in the key moments. It's not like he threw for big time yardage or anything like that, but he was able to make those throws to the weapons that he had available to him. And so I think he's able to get the win, get the upset for Syracuse. I've got the Orange with 30, Georgia Tech 26. One other game to watch, Kansas State at Tulane. I think Kansas State is favored by 17 in this one. I think Tulane maybe makes it a little bit interesting, but I think K-State ends up covering that and gets the win there comfortably. Then in the 3:30 window, the Cyhawk game, Iowa State at number 21 Iowa, both teams 1-0. The Hawkeyes put up some good offense after a slow start in the first half. They ended up with 492 total yards and 40 points in a win over Illinois State. And then Rocco Becht was extremely efficient for the Cyclones in their win over North Dakota, 267 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Even though both offenses have looked a little better, this game is traditionally a grind it, slug it out type of game where the defenses play really well. I think that trend continues, and I'm going with Iowa getting a 21-14 win over Iowa State. The other games at 3:30 to watch, just running over these quickly and giving my winner, I've got Cal at Auburn. I think the Tigers win at home. South Carolina at Kentucky. The new additions for the Wildcats looked good in a game that was shortened to about 2.5 quarters in Lexington. A 31-0 win for them. I think they win again this week against the South Carolina team that struggled mightily against Old Dominion. And then Michigan State at Maryland. I could spend a little bit more time on this one, but I got some other games to get to. I think the Terrapins are able to benefit from playing this one at home. I think this one is really close, and I'm really on the fence with this one. I think if it was in East Lansing, I'm definitely giving it to the Spartans. I think Maryland maybe gets a late field goal or gets a stop to win this one. So three home wins in kind of the other interesting 3:30 games. Then moving into the night game, the earlier one out of these, 7 p.m. Eastern kickoff, 6 p.m. Central Time. Number 19, Kansas at Illinois. Both teams 1-0. Jalen Daniels kind of struggled a bit in their win over Lindenwood. Just 9 for 15, 148 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 INT in the game. Devin Neal did really well at running back, a high yards per carry average, 8 rushes for 112 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Mello Dotson added a pick 6. For Illinois, Luke Altmaier was 19 for 24, 213 yards and 4 touchdowns. So he was really able to get the Fighting Illini into the end zone often in that win. And the defense is both. It was against lesser opponents, but they allowed just 3 points combined. So I think this could be a good defensive game. But both of these teams have pretty good offenses. I think Kansas is able to get that passing game going a little bit better this week behind Daniels. And I'm going with Kansas 31, Illinois 27. Then in the 7:30, 6:30 Central window, you've got number 14 Tennessee at number 20 or versus number 24 North Carolina State in Charlotte, North Carolina. Both teams are 1-1, and there's a lot of similarities in this one. Between the quarterbacks, Tennessee's Nico Iamaleava threw for 314 yards and 3 touchdowns, and NC State's Grayson McCall coming in from Coastal Carolina for 318, 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. The running backs, Dylan Sampson for the Volunteers, 124 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then Jordan Waters transferring into the Wolfpack from Duke, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns. And even their leading receivers, Dante Thornton and Kevin Concepcion, both received for over 100 yards. The Wolfpack did struggle, though, against Western Carolina. They were down 14-7 after the first quarter, just tied at 14 at the half, and then they trailed 21-17 going into the fourth. They were able to get the scoring going in the final quarter, but overall, a little bit of a lackluster performance for them. I'm going with Tennessee by double digits in this one, 34-24. And then a rivalry game in Lincoln, Nebraska. Colorado 1-0 at Nebraska, also 1-0. Nebraska is receiving some votes this week in the AP and I think coaches poll as well, just sitting on the outside. Dylan Raiola looked really good, efficient for the Cornhuskers in their win over UTEP. He was 19 for 27, 238 yards and 2 touchdowns. On the flip side, for Colorado, we know that Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter are going to deliver. Sanders threw for 445 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. They did struggle a bit against North Dakota State to get the ball into the end zone at times. I think they put up just 31 points in that game. And then Travis Hunter played 129 out of 131 snaps. Something to note, he missed one of those was because his helmet came off during the play, so he had to sit out one. And then one other snap, he was not out on the field. So we know both those two guys are going to deliver. Jimmy Horn also had a really good game in week 1, 7 receptions for 198 yards and a touchdown. But the question is, how will those guys do against a tough Huskers defense? I think the Cornhuskers, they had a good defense last year. I think it's even more experienced and a better unit this year. I think it's going to be tough for Colorado. They might get a lot of yards, but I think this is a Nebraska team that can buckle down in the red zone. And so I am going with Nebraska 37, Colorado 27. The Buffaloes kind of fell apart in the big games last year, and we know how they finished down the stretch. Then at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, App State at number 25, Clemson. The Mountaineers are 1-0. Clemson's 0-1. Clemson suffered a big loss to Georgia. I think they fare better in this one, but the Mountaineers keep it closer than expected. I think Clemson's favored by 17. I'm going Clemson 35, App State 21. I think this is a game that you don't want to skip tuning in for. I think it could be really interesting and could potentially be a game you could flip over to late after the earlier evening games wrap up. Finally, at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific time, Boise State at number 7, Oregon. This is a prime opportunity for a patented Broncos upset. We know what they did, especially back in the mid-2000s, pulling massive upsets, especially in bowl games, and being the premier power really in what is now called the Group of Five. Oregon looked extremely lackluster in their week 1 win over Idaho. I think they do get those issues fixed. I think it's kind of a wake-up call. A coach like Dan Lanning is kind of in that same ilk as guys like Nick Saban and Kirby Smart. I think he'll get this team refocused, adjusted for this win. I do think Boise State is an extremely talented team, especially rushing the ball. Ashton Jeanty rushed for 267 yards in their week 1 win. But Oregon did have the number 10 rush defense last year, and that continued. While they did struggle, they allowed just 49 rushing yards against the Vandals. So I think they're able to kind of limit the running of Boise State a little bit. And I think they get a 34-27 win, but Boise State is able to cover in this one. Finally, a nightcap one, just real quick, final prediction here in this game. Brilliant Morton and Texas Tech going into the Palouse, against Washington State. He had an incredible week 1 win. 378 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. Washington State's quarterback as well had a good week 1, I think throwing around kind of like 350. But I do think Texas Tech is able to get the road win and improve to 2-0 and get some momentum going into Big 12 play coming up here soon. But those are my predictions for week 2 of the college football season. Let me know your thoughts on my predictions and what you are predicting, and what are maybe some games that I missed in this little rundown. I tried to hit as many of the interesting ones as I could. A game like a Pitt at Cincinnati is an interesting game. I think the two teams might match up well, but not a lot of stakes, I don't think, in that one in the grand scheme of things. But that's it for this episode of College Football Talk. I'm your host, Peter Burnett, signing out. Peace.